Hello, I'm Martijn Gaat and this is Does Logistics Matter, a podcast on trends and innovations in supply chain and logistics. Answering yes to the question today is Pieter van den Broecke, Managing Director Netherlands, Belgium and Germany at Manhattan Associates. In this episode, we talk about how retailers and logistics service providers should embrace change to keep up with changing customer demands, how change impacts people and processes and how technology is a key enabler, and we also talk about the role younger generations play in this. Please enjoy my conversation with Pieter van den Broecke. Pieter, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Martijn.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you here yet again. You were the first ever guest of the Does Logistics Matter podcast, and it's wonderful to have you here again. This is your fourth time, and I'm almost guessing that if we could hear our regular listeners, we would have like the cheers moment when Norm walks into the bar, and the listeners of the podcast would go, "Pieter!" But we can't hear them; they can hear us. So the first episode we talked about one of my big passions, innovations in warehousing, and the second podcast that was episode 10 actually. We talked about the changing customer journey, and we were talking about retail and about the impact of changing customer behavior and the impact on supply chain, and then. We actually, I think, continued that discussion in episode 16, where we spoke about the increasing speed with which organizations need to respond to the changes of customer demand. Well, you know how I always start this podcast, and this one is not going to be any different than the earlier episodes. So I'm going to ask you. Does logistics matter? Or in your case, does logistics still matter?
Hey, Martijn, absolutely. And I would say it's a triple yes. Yes, yes, yes. The first yes is it's incredible how logistics are put under pressure because of environmental, societal issues that we are facing.
Yeah.
So no discussion about that. The second yes is because the supply chain has never been so disrupted as ever before.
Yep.
It started with the pandemic, but it didn't stop there. We have our war situation in Ukraine, energy crisis going up, inflation going up. So this is a massive disruption of supply chains. And the third yes is that companies are trying to get as close to the consumer of their products as possible, because consumer behavior has changed, as we discussed in previous podcasts. And this can only be handled in the right way by making your logistics, getting it very close to the consumer. So a triple yes, why logistics still matters.
Okay, excellent answer. Pieter, the impacts of these changes and movements in supply chain. What is the impact for retailers, for example?
Yes. So retailers, they have to be constantly on the watch out on how they can meet their consumer demands.
Yeah.
How this consumer wants to be served. At the same time, they have to protect their own company profitability.
Yes.
So they need to find the right balance there. So what I see is that retailers are rethinking their network. What is the route to the consumer? What is the route from their suppliers into their own network that they control? So, and as consumers are buying products, and a product is something physical, the only way you are actually meeting your customer expectations is by getting the product into their hands. But that means you need to have product availability. So inventory management, product availability is a key success factor for retailers today to meet their customer expectations.
Pieter, when I hear you speak, there's one word that pops out at me, and that's the word change.
Exactly, Martijn. And there is absolutely no escape anymore for logistics organizations to change.
Yeah.
Where before maybe there was always a challenge to make a case for change and a case for investment, but today there is no escape. And the rate of change is only increasing. and the amplitude of change that companies are realizing or experiencing is also getting bigger and bigger. So pandemic, inflation, energy costs rising, the war. We already forgot about Brexit. And I think 3 years ago, Brexit was the B word, and everything was about Brexit and what this will do to us and our economy and our logistics. But it seems to be like a very small footnote in the history of today's economy. So no escape for change. But the real question now is how to change. Yeah, and that is, I think, an important aspect of for companies to manage their organizations, manage their logistics, is how can they realize the change?
Um, I guess change used to be more of a reactive thing, and sometimes proactive. But there was some issue or some challenge, and everybody would go, "We need change," and then there was a big change, and then for a while everything was as is. But that is no longer the case because there's constant change.
There is constant change, Martijn, and you're absolutely right. It was much more like every now and then we make a change. And that was a very painful experience for the organization to change every now and then. And this was like a project on its own to change.
Yeah.
And I believe that today, with everything's going on around us, is that change is not something that is creating something revolutionary. It needs to be an evolutionary process.
Yes.
And that is the shift that companies have to make in logistics. Absolutely, but in general as well. Yeah. So evolutionary change rather than revolutionary change.
So how does that work then? How do you? Well, there's the word again. How do you change from approaching it in a revolutionary way to an evolutionary way?
Yeah. So a very good question, Martijn. Obviously, there are a number of factors related to change. There is the people factor, there is the process factor, the organizational factor, but also a technology factor.
Yeah.
And as people or organizations were not really changing a lot, there was no culture of change. And that culture of change has to be introduced again in the culture of a company.
Mm-hmm.
And this means that everybody in the organization, from the top leadership, needs to embrace the willingness and the need for change, but also create an environment where you can change. And the environment where you can change is going to be, people will be very important. People will have to have that spirit, that energy, that entrepreneurial behavior to every single day embrace change. Now, when companies were not changing in the past, some of it was also related to technological barriers, where investments were made once in the past in a system, which was their own proprietary system, which was customized to their specific needs of that moment in their existence at that point in time. And then it could not evolve anymore. So people were afraid to make changes to systems where changes were actually required from a business perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then change was imposed, and then it was very, very painful. So companies need to get now into a modus where they have a foundation where change can be implemented in a continuous way.
What do you think is the influence of the younger generations? Because if I compare the speed with which my kids communicate and interact with technology, that is so much faster than how I interacted with technology or even had technology available. So these younger tech savvy generations are getting into positions in our companies, in our supply chains where they have much more influence on what's happening and what the role of tech is. What do you see as the role of the young ones?
The young ones are the drivers, Martijn. And the young ones are embracing, since they're born, technology.
Yeah.
And technology is going to be the key enabler to make certain change happen, or most change happen. So, and this is linked to digitization of information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the younger generation, they're constantly on their smartphone.
Yeah.
They're constantly connected. They're always on. And this is a mentality topic, is that you can manage in your behavior, this constant on, always connected attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And this needs to be translated to how companies are organizing themselves and how information and logistics organizations are organizing themselves, and information is shared across all the entities in the value chain, in the supply chain. And I may have mentioned that before, but very often I still see that even though information can travel at the speed of light, information is today still too often moving at the speed of the physical movement of goods in a supply chain, in the logistics chain.
Yeah.
So only when a container arrives at the distribution center, only then that logistics organization realizes, oh, we are receiving some product. Rather than getting a pre-advanced notice that something is arriving. Only when you as a retailer, you see that something hasn't arrived, you realize that there is an issue. You should have been informed beforehand that something is going to be late. And we can give the same examples for consumers that are not really proactively informed on that. So the whole younger generation that is having information and technology on their fingertips, that's a key conditio sine qua non for organizations to change whilst they're embracing technology.
So you mentioned people, you mentioned technology. One of the other things you mentioned were processes. Now, as a former logistics engineer, I know the importance of processes. They need to be solid and they need to be good. But I think with how the world is moving now, that where processes were first more siloed, and now the speed with which companies need to respond, that no longer works.
No, I agree, Martijn. Processes that are siloed are not going to help any company today to be successful. There is a need from a logistics perspective, from a fulfillment perspective, to be much more responsive to the consumer needs.
Yeah.
So everybody wants to be closer to the consumer. If you then have a very siloed process where every next step in the process waits for the other one to be finished, you're not going to get there with your responsive business need. So you need to bring processes closer to each other. They need to be fully streamlined, and there needs to be a seamless execution of the end-to-end process. So this means that a unified process across the complete fulfillment chain is absolutely critically important. This means that you're not waiting for a transportation plan, as an example, to be created before you can execute on your warehouse plan. Or you're not waiting for your warehouse to have finished picking and packing and staging all the products to get your transportation plan created. This needs to happen in a concurrent fashion. From a planning perspective, but also from an execution perspective. I'm just giving an example. Both areas of logistics execution must, in a continuous way, be tuned with each other and be informed of each other and be complementary to each other, so that you can actually orchestrate a warehousing, transportation, i.e. and fulfillment execution in a seamless way with the focus on the customer need.
Pieter, I'd like to get back to the important question: how?
Yes, Martijn. I think the how, from my perspective, it starts with leadership.
Yes.
Leadership that is going to stimulate the culture of change, of continuous change.
Continuous change.
And this means that at all levels in the organization, you have to be open for change. So that's a cultural change that needs to happen. Don't be judgmental, be curious, I would say. Yes. And think about what needs to be changed,
rather than introducing solutions as the starting point of the conversation.
Yeah.
Solutions from a technology perspective, solutions from a process perspective. But as an organization, first think about what is my business requirement, what is a change need, and what would be the business benefits if I introduce change. I think this is very important that this culture change is implemented in a gradual way at the company level.
Yeah. So this means you also need to really look at what the people need.
Yes. So the people need, but the people is one aspect. So when you change, you want to bring people to the change.
Yeah.
Rather than change to the people.
Yes.
And I think the people of today, the younger generation, is probably easier to get them to change.
Yeah.
Because they are eager to make things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They like constantly new things, new input,
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have the energy. They are born in that kind of mentality. So that is definitely going to be a key success factor, is bring young talent to your organization.
Yeah.
Obviously, don't ignore the gray talent either, because they obviously have also something to say.
Yeah, for sure. Pieter, what do you think is the biggest barrier or the biggest challenge when we're talking about change?
Yeah, Martijn. Let me answer that question in an indirect way. If I ask who are the key disruptors in the world today in our economy, then you can look at the Googles, the Amazons of this world, the Teslas of this world.
Yeah.
So what are they? They are maybe, supply chain organizations, sales organizations, but they're really technology companies.
Yeah.
So what that means is that embracing technology is a key enabler for really making fundamental change difference. And this is what I believe is one of the key fundamental barriers of being able to realize change, is that companies are not able to actually embrace technology that is the key enabler for change.
You spoke about the factors of change, the barriers in change. What would you say do companies need to do to enable themselves to constantly change?
Martijn, companies should accept there's no escape for change. This means that they have to be ready to change every day. How to get to that is by implementing an organization, a culture of change, open-minded to change. You need the right people for that. Again, people that can work with change, that are embracing change. You need to have processes that are not stopping you to change. And please remember, technology will be a key enabler.
Clear? Thank you very much for being on the show again, Pieter.
Thank you, Martijn. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Does Logistics Matter? For more on trends and innovations in supply chain and logistics, visit our blog on logisticsmatter.com. This podcast was recorded and produced by Dimitry Vleugel. The music is based on a sample by Ragaman and produced by Michael Spengler. This episode was sponsored by Manhattan Associates. Manhattan Associates is a technology leader in supply chain and omnichannel commerce. They unite information across the enterprise, converging front-end sales with back-end supply chain execution. Their software, platform, technology, and unmatched experience help drive both top-line growth and bottom-line profitability for their customers. For more information, visit www.manage.com. That's MANH.com.